It's not a wrap yet. This is about overpopulation. Things are still unfolding. Human numbers are still growing. This is a concern of mine, and it should be a concern of yours if you have a social conscience and care about the future of life on Earth beyond yourselves.
Definitely representing the top 2 or 3 critical problems we're facing. The Malthus scenario of the population outstripping the food supply could still well come to pass. The green revolution in fertilizers has almost run its course.
Who is Malthus?
Thomas Malthus, English priest who first put world population as a problem on the agenda, really. Seminal figure. Go to Wikipedia or Google him, it's all there.
When did he live?
18th century England.
And what did he say?
Well, he said basically that the way things were going, one day the world's food supply would not be able to feed the population and there would be massive famine. It's still a realistic scenario.
I've got a thing about exponentiality, things like that go and
good word,
I have a feeling that
great word.
Great word, exponential potential. And I believe it can happen for the great, like great things happen. Also for the negative, potentially. I believe human population, what we might call a plague of crickets or a plague of this and that. Humanity, myself included, yourself, are included in that plague. Rats, I've heard, not to call us rats, rat race. Rats apparently, when there are too many rats,
yeah, they turn on each other.
They regulate their own numbers.
They kill each other. They turn on each other and tear each other to shreds, yeah, that's what they do. If you put too many rats in an enclosed space, they'll actually start killing each other until there's only a certain number left.
It's not a nice example. Maybe we shouldn't get to that stage. Maybe we shouldn't have more than how many children? 1 or none. 2 max, please. How to do this, to enforce it? I'd prefer not. I'd prefer it happen by choice, by awareness about the scenario that the Earth is a potentially infinite spinning rock and we are this tiny moment and it's evolved. And in the last couple of 100 years, humanity has grown and grown and grown, and nature has minimalized and minimalized so much that we've nearly ripped this living miracle apart. And we must stop. We must stop ourselves, otherwise.
It's good night, Vienna. Yeah.
What are some of the potential outcomes if we don't?
4 horsemen of the apocalypse, war, plague, famine. Who knows? It's unpredictable, literally. It's an interesting question. How can you enforce population limits? China's done it with the one-child policy. You can't do that in a democracy. So it's an interesting, it comes back to the debate of, is a dictatorship or a democracy going to save us? Some people advocate benign dictatorship. Democracy is too short-term, it operates on short-termism, and you've got to sell policies to the people.
I'd like to ask people, I'd like to plead. My name is Christo Warner and I plead for people to have 1 or even none, but 1, 2 max. But we need to regress. We need to not only stop growing, but we need to regress and let nature come back if we want a sustainable eternity, potential eternity. People, potential eternity on the living planet. It's top. We need to find ways. There's safe sex, there's condoms, there's choosing to have 1 child. Apparently,
there's abstinence. Why not?
I don't know about that.
It's an option.
It's an option. It's an option. What other options? What's that one? where if people in wealthy countries apparently aren't having so many children, maybe they're focused more on success and more on lifestyle or something. Apparently it's the poorer countries that are multiplying so much. Maybe if we take down borders between countries and let people move freely as they should be able to anyway, in my mind, then maybe this will save that feeling of needing. If we share more and reduce that poverty trap, which is creating this overpopulation as well. There's also religion as a factor, can be a factor.
Catholic Church, yeah.
I don't want to burn any bridges or burn any crosses. That's the last thing I want to do, but I do want to prioritise the long-term future of life on Earth. And that needs to be, life on Earth needs to be number one.
Non-anthropocentric life. It's important to emphasise the right of all species to live without being exploited or used. The deep ecological perspective. All species have a right to exist in and for themselves without being dominated by one other species, i.e. mankind or the human race.
Anthropocentric means pretty much humans focusing on humans as number one, but maybe more of an equitable with other species. It could come back to this ownership thing. But
deep ecology.
Overpopulation. If we don't do it, if we don't immediately, because how many billion are we? About 7.
6.5, counting.
It's a lot. What are these crazy numbers? Can we even
within the
envision?
next 50 years, we're projected to reach 9 billion by 2050.
It's not acceptable.
It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. Definitely not.
The numbers will fall off a cliff one way or the other. It's going to happen as sure as the sun rises. It's just a question of are we going to be proactive and try to take control ourselves, or is nature/Gaia going to do it for us? Those are the only two options.
Well, if we continue with so many people, there's going to be more and more pressure, more and more battles for resources, more and more police states, more and more rules to tighten. I'd prefer if that didn't happen. Probably war for resources, water, food, all of these kind of things. If population gets bigger, then these problems get even tighter. Population decreases, these problems are relieved.
And then again, it's a question of balance and resources, because in the Western world, in Japan and Italy, lots of other countries, the population is actually falling. It's only in the very poor countries, Africa, India, South America, where there's no welfare state, no social security, people feel compelled to have large families because it's the only thing they've got in their old age to keep them alive. So how do you create an equitable distribution of resources worldwide so that people don't have to have big families? It's all a question of distribution of resources. That's what it boils down to.
I think allowing people to travel is one way. Just the right to be on Earth. This could be one equitable sharing of resources.
Well, you talk about allowing people to travel. Most people are free to travel now. They just don't have the money.
Don't know. A lot of countries, if you're from a third world country, it's hard to get a visa. It's with exchange rates. What are those? So someone from, say, Ethiopia, their money's worth 1/20th of an Australian dollar or whatever. But it makes it that much harder. But anyway, finding ways to be more equitable. It sounds like a nice thing to do anyway. How much time have we got? Oh, we're here. Overpopulation, your idea is welcome.
Rock on.
Population, yeah.
Nah, it's cornball. You didn't record that, did you? No way. That's going to be cut.
That's a wrap. Wrap?
Yeah,